Work it, make it, do it, makes us.
So this is an element of storytelling specifically that I came up with. It's a different kind of presentation. It's meant to be fun and lighthearted, and more importantly, I want to encourage all of us to start telling stories to each other. Okay? So this is specifically my Phoenix Project War story. We're going to walk through it real fast. But this came about because I met a fellow named Gene Kim. And I'll tell you what happened specifically. I did a keynote at a certain conference. It was actually the DevNexus conference a couple years ago in Boston. And then Gene Kim was also there as a keynote presenter. And then after I got off stage and I'd done my presentation, I was walking down a hallway, and several people walked up to me and said, "Hey, I loved your presentation." I said, "Did you like the demo?" Because my presentations always involve demos. They said, "No, but the presentation was so great, I'm buying your book." And I realized they're not talking about me, okay? And so I actually talked to Gene about it, and he's actually seen this presentation. So here's how this goes. So Gene Kim is absolutely everywhere. If you actually don't know who Gene is, I'd highly recommend you start following this gentleman and understanding what he's doing for the world at large. He's fundamentally going out and preaching the concepts of DevOps to everybody and trying to get the whole world engaged from an IT standpoint. Because if we start applying these practices to our everyday lives, we will fundamentally build better software faster, and more importantly, just create a more humane environment for IT workers in general. Okay? So the Phoenix Project is a fantastic book if you've not read it. So this is Gene Kim on the left-hand side here, and this is me. And I brought my glasses too, so, you know, might be it. So he's the real Gene Kim, and I thought of myself as the unreal Gene Kim. So from a comparison standpoint, he's been an entrepreneur. He's the king of DevOps. I've been a developer advocate. I work for Red Hat, so that really doesn't have much similarity. So he's the founder of the DevOps Enterprise Summit, which is a great conference. I founded my own conference way back when. It's called DevNexus out of Atlanta. He's a world-famous author. I've written some tweets. So you can see there's not much common ground here. I didn't know why people were confusing us. Could you see that why? Could you understand why? So maybe it was just the goatee. And that's what everyone confused us on. So perhaps we had something else in common, and that's specifically the focus on the hands-on people, right? He focuses on hands-on operations folks. I focus on hands-on developers. And this is the problem that we have today, right? Developers think they can just throw stuff over the wall and bounce it off the operations team their head. You like my Harry Potter image there? This is a new one that we have. But that concept has been pervasive throughout our industry. As a matter of fact, I think we've taken the joy out of programming when we basically told developers, you never see it run. All you got to do is get it to compile and you check it in, okay? Because you never see it run, right? The CI system actually does the build. It goes through staging and QA, et cetera, and it makes it over to production where someone else makes it run. It's kind of like when we were back in college and all we had to do is get it to compile, and that's all we're done with the project. I feel like we've done that again to ourselves by having this wall and this separation. So we have to break down this wall and bring these two sides together. And this is super huge and super important because this is what the whole team now looks like. At least this is how I like to think of it. Okay? So I have my Harry Potter manager, she loves, or my QA manager, she loves Harry Potter. She's a big fan. My PMO is the project management office, they're a big fan of Game of Thrones. Perhaps the ops team, I think of them as Spock, right? And of course the DBA has to be Darth Vader. But the point of this is, all these folks are part of our same team, and you have common ground with all of them, as an example. As a matter of fact, Comic-Con's coming up. You can all get dressed up and go together. We're all geeks together, is my basic point here. So just keep that in mind. And by the way, the security team here, I'm not saying they're zombies. I'm saying they like The Walking Dead. They're not like The Walking Dead. You know what I mean? Just keep that in mind. So this is my personal Phoenix Project story. And here's how this goes. It actually happened in Phoenix, Arizona, of all things. So this is where, again, someone had a mistaken identity, thought I was Gene Kim, said, I liked your book. So I had to go read the book at that point. And I read the book. It's a phenomenal work of fiction that talks about how they actually destroyed a business by an IT software rollout. So they basically rolled out to production, stopped the business dead cold. I did this myself, okay? So this is approximately about 15, 16 years ago. It was actually a .NET app at the time. I was actually running the local Java user group, putting on a Java conference, and organizing Java events, and doing .NET as my day job. I was the CTO specifically of this small company, and I reported directly to the VP and CEO of the company directly for this project. And it was one of those things where they said, we absolutely have to hit a deadline no matter what. The scope of the project is 3 times bigger than anything you've ever seen, and we would just deliver it no matter what. Okay, that was the absolute goal. We had to deliver that thing. They were moving from an old character user interface to a new modern web application, which meant not only were the people working for the company getting a nice new user interface, but they're also opening it up to their actual customers in an e-commerce style and letting people do their shopping online for the very first time. All of this was happening on a single day. We had to hit a certain deadline with no cutover strategy whatsoever. There was no running in parallel. There was no migration. It was just go. So this is how we kind of went after it. Because this is specifically what my boss told me, okay? I said, we cannot hit the deadline. We will not actually achieve all the functionality. We certainly won't have any quality, right? That's your triangle. We won't have all three. As a matter of fact, we won't even be able to sleep. And he said, you can sleep when you're dead. And I took that to heart. That's actually a core philosophy I take with me now everywhere I go for every project that I take on, because it is fundamentally true. You can sleep when you're dead. So I did think about that, and my old boss does look a little bit like that particular boss, if you know what I mean, from that perspective. A little less hair, but otherwise about the same. So here's how we organized our project to pull this trick off. We basically co-loaded the desk. So I was the team lead. I was the lead architect, everything at this point. So I had to hire people specifically, but I already pulled some people internally that I knew had the right skill set. We actually co-located desks. So I specifically moved a whole bunch of people out of the room and out of the area that I needed my team to be in. And I moved myself out of the office that I had and into the middle cubicle of all these other cubicles, because that way if a decision had to be made and a meeting had to happen, here's how a stand-up meeting looked for us. I would jump up onto the desk, looking out over all the cubicles, and ask everyone for their status and reload balance project tasks if we had to, and I would do that all throughout the day. Now, it was crazy. I'm standing on a desk, but my boss said, you can sleep when you're dead, so that meant to me all rules were broken. And so all forms of decorum were broken at that point. We actually built our own servers, put them on everybody's desks, forget the data center. We pulled everything into right where we were so we could go as fast as we possibly could go. It was kind of insane. Now, we did demos every week. We did our own burn down chart. We invented these things on the fly. We'd heard about Agile. I'd been to a few Agile conferences. But in this case, we absolutely had to go super fast, and we had to be we had to trim every possible process aspect out of it. So I basically just built a burn down chart with a spreadsheet, and we just went for it. Yeah, basically went hard, okay? We demoed every week, and I actually put on the calendar invite for every demo because I wanted the developers to not do the 80-20 trick. You guys have seen this before. The developer's always 80% done for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I said, you're going to demo everything you turn in as a feature. You're going to demo it weekly, because we had a weekly deliverable. The CEO was invited to every presentation. He only showed up once, but I got to tell you, the one time he did show up, from that point forward, the developers hit their weekly deliverable. There was no longer any particular presentation. So we hit the production deadline, and we shut down the business. We literally stopped their business because we had so many bugs in the system. We rolled it out. We were double charging people's credit cards. We couldn't do refunds. They had a point of sale system where you could walk into a brick and mortar store. The barcode scanner stopped working. And this is the best part. We integrated with a bunch of third-party systems too, including a key system to let you in and out of buildings. We locked people out of buildings. We fundamentally botched the whole thing. $5 million was in play at that very moment. And of course, everybody was in a massive panic attack. So we had to get super smart. And we basically applied all those same principles I talked about, but we got really crazy really fast. So we understood, we couldn't be finger pointing. It wasn't just the business or the executive team or the development team or the operations team that, did the rollout. We all had to get on the same boat and get on the same page. So we started rolling out patches every night. We went to a daily deliverable at that point because we had to start fixing things. And I basically spent time with the business every day. What's the next most worst thing? Is the refund thing a big problem, or the double charge of credit cards a big problem? No, because this is back when you could store credit card numbers. So I actually got one of our guys who basically fixed the credit cards manually on the fly. Seriously. Right? We'd retype the number in and actually get the right charge associated with a credit card. Refunds, we just said, we'll give you a refund in the future. We just told the customers that we'd email them later. We actually did everything by hand where we couldn't actually do things in an automated fashion. It was kind of insane, but it worked. And we actually pulled everyone together, and we were able to find that top priority item and fix it. Okay? We then also had bug fix Saturdays because we weren't going fast enough, and I realized that the developers didn't have enough skin in the game. So basically, we rolled out throughout the week, and if we still had high priority items for that week that hadn't been negotiated with the business and things were still bad, you all had to come in on Saturday, everybody, and we would work. And here's what I found. We only had to do 2 of those Saturdays before the engineers started producing vastly better code by Friday. I'm not kidding. And so I've thought about that at great length. If you ask people to work every weekend until the code doesn't suck, the code gets a lot better faster. Okay? So we did all that. This is kind of the journey I like to think of from a perspective of moving in from a developer and moving into DevOps world. The concept of DevOps is a cultural problem. It's a team problem. It's a communication problem. It's how you organize and specifically how you motivate the people on your team. And I think that's super fundamental, and it is the key aspect of what it means to be digitally transformed and become, let's say, this future microservices kind of software developer. You have to have elastic infrastructure. You need some form of automation, whether it be Kubernetes, Puppet, Chef, or Ansible. You've got to think in terms of CI/CD, right? Maybe like yesterday, I did advanced deployment techniques with canary deployments and things of that nature. These are all key aspects of actually getting ready for rolling out software in a net new way. Maybe that might be microservices. Do read these particular books. They're absolutely awesome as far as the Phoenix project goes, and the follow-on book, the Devops Handbook, also by Jez Humble and John. So there's John, Jez, and Patrick specifically worked on that second book. They're all fantastic. I keep them by my bedside. I refer to them often. I've gone through the Phoenix project now 2 or 3 times. It is that great. Okay? So let's kind of get close to wrapping up here. Do you guys know who Viktor Frankl is? Look up the Wikipedia page if you don't know about Viktor Frankl. He's incredibly famous as kind of an early philosopher and psychology person, if you will. And he specifically was a Nazi concentration camp victim. He lost most of his family members in a Nazi concentration camp. But he wrote these kind of statements down because these were core philosophies for him. We were no longer able to change our situation. We have to change ourselves, okay? And in his situation, he had a really bad one. But he fundamentally understood you could only control you, okay, at the end of the day. And so if everything can be taken away from you, the last of all human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances. And this is so fundamental to how I think at this point in my life. And from that experience and from other experiences, this is exactly the core principle I talked about with all my children. Because at the end of the day, it might suck. My rules, your responsibilities, it's not your fault. It's still your responsibility. And all you can do at this point is choose your attitude and how you will respond. Okay? That's it for me. Thank you so much. If you have questions, feel free to email me or follow me on Twitter. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I certainly enjoyed kind of talking about this story, and I hope you guys talk to each other about your own Phoenix Project war stories. Thank you.